There it is. All right. So after the circle spun around about 50 times, we're finally live on Monday night here on the Roto Hackers podcast. And we're doing this during the Lions and Packers game, but the Lions and Packers are playing. So maybe we'll get more viewership than normal. Let's go ahead and hit the intro. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the one and only Roto Hackers podcast, your unauthorized reporters of fantasy football news and information. That intro was made by the illustrious Judah Buddha, who's not here today because he's got a birthday in his family. So he's not here today, so we can excuse him for that. I'm AJ Herschel, also known as The Kid, and right over here, it's Jared. And I would go higher, but my voice is gone. And Drew Vano's already in the chat saying, what's good, fellas? Oh, good to see you, Drew. Hope you had a good week in fantasy. Jared, how's it going? How you doing, man?
Horrible. Just lots of work stress. And today's like the second day of like 12 or 13 days straight I'm going to be working. So, yeah, it's not great. I could lie and be like, "Oh no, it's fine," but I'll be honest for a second.
Yeah,
so yeah, but that's okay. That's all right. Fantasy. This is a good little distraction. How about you?
Yeah. Well, like I told you earlier, I woke up with a splitting headache. Pretty sure it's from dehydration, but drinking a lot of water all day, so it's better. But watching the Lions score first on the Packers was it's a nice little way to tide me over until we got to Roto Hackers. So Drew says, it's been a rough fantasy year. Dude, you could not be more right. I feel like every week injuries just keep getting higher and higher. What, we had like 5 quarterbacks go down this week? It's a mess. What is happening? It's like the Hunger Games out there or something.
Yeah, it's tough. There's you've got a ton of pretty good wide receivers out there. So everybody's wide receivers just all kind of cancel out. And then
that was an accident.
Okay. Just a little clip. Yeah. I thought we were about to get a clip of a wide receiver making a great play. So you've got that. And then on the running back side of things, it's just the opposite. I mean, you've had 2 great weeks from Christian McCaffrey, one great week from Derrick Henry. And then a lot of the rest has just sort of been a mix and a lot of, disappointing players. James Robinson, Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis. Yeah. The list is, could just go on and on. Saquon, all these different ones.
CEH too.
CEH, yeah. I drafted CEH in one league towards the end just to have him in one league. And now I wish I hadn't done that.
Regret.
Yes. So yeah, it's it seems like every year it gets harder to predict fantasy. It just gets murkier. And that's not the direction I want it to be going. I want it to be going the opposite way. So
yeah, true.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a lot of 1-1 teams after this week, and I'm not even gonna complain that much about it. Like that's better than a bunch of 0-2 teams. So yeah,
for sure. Speaking of which, how'd you do this week in fantasy anyway? Because I know last week you had a lot of wins in your bigger leagues.
Yeah, so I was like 12-9 last week, and in the bigger money leagues like 12-6, and then this week it's just going to be about flip-flopped, Okay. So gotcha. I don't know. Well, tonight's games will determine how it breaks out, but it's like a 50-50 at best thing, and it's probably not going to be that good. So it's probably going to be 2/3 to 3/4. Well, I don't know exactly the numbers, how they'll break out, but just probably a majority of my teams are going to be 1-1. Some will be 2-0, and then hopefully only a handful will be 0-2. But yeah, that's not the best start. But.
Yeah, for me, this week was actually a good week, barring any miracles from Tanyan, Jones, or Devontae in a couple leagues that I'm up in. I'm hopefully going 6-2 this week with only one of those teams being 0-2. So I'm really happy with how this week went. I won in Roto Hackers in the stupidest match in the history of the world. I think I put up 77, and I think Adam, the Devout Patriots, put up a whopping 63.
Oh my goodness!
It was an NFC East of a fantasy game. Drew Vano says, "You guys think George Kittle's gonna bounce back? I'm in a no tight end league, but I have him in my flex, and the other options are Galladay, Jamal Williams, Eli Mitchell, and Trey Sermon." And I know we joked so much about the Ravens just having the worst conditioning coaches for getting two of their running backs and Marcus Peters torn ACLs, but the Niners running backs are just a different breed. Every single one of their top 4 has gone out of a game so far.
Yeah.
What is going on? So how do you answer this, Jared? Does Kittle bounce back, or do you go, I don't know, Williams or Mitchell? What do you think?
I mean, I think Kittle probably bounces back, but there's some stuff to worry about with the 49ers so far. I mean, it's been weird. It's been all basically like all Deebo Samuel, with a little bit of week 1 Mitchell mixed in. Kittle's gotten very little. Brandon Ayuk, nothing. So I'm not like a huge fan of going with a tight end in your flex, regardless of who it is. Like maybe, I think at one point I would have probably said like, okay, if you've got Kelsey and then you've got Waller or Kittle, maybe go with that. But I mean, right now, the way, Kittle's looking, it seems like, maybe you might even have to limit that to more like, Kelsey plus either Waller or Hawkinson, who, is, one of the few legitimate targets for Detroit. So yeah, the 49ers, I don't know. I would be tempted to roll with, if Eli Mitchell is in there next week, Hasty's going to be out. I guess maybe
Sermon's questionable.
Yeah, Sermon's questionable. I mean, even Mitchell is. But, I think just, running backs and wide receivers, I tend to trust more, if they're the number 1 running back, or if they're, the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver, I tend to trust a little bit more than almost any tight end. And Kittle might have been one of the few exceptions. But the way it's gone so far, he's gonna have that breakout game, where he has like 160 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it's hard to know when that's gonna come,
Right. Yeah. Sermon and Galladay are both easy no's for me. Williams is like slightly tempting to put in flex, but he gets the Ravens next week. So I don't trust. I mean, he's going to get the passing floor probably for sure, but I just don't know how I feel about it. So like Eli Mitchell out of those 4 right now is like the only one I consider putting over Kittle. And I think the 49ers think they get the Packers. So who knows what the score of that game is going to end up being, because both of those teams are just enigmas to me. Packers drop a game and they still have a chance to lose to the Lions. It's tied 7-7 right now. And the Niners go from a 40-point game against the Lions to 17 against the Eagles, which makes me think, is the Eagles defense just good, or did the Niners just have a bad day? Like there's no consistency outside of like the Bucks being great so far in these first 2 weeks in the NFL. So I think he will bounce back. Mitchell's the only one I'd even consider putting over Kittle out of those options, though, for me.
Probably the same for me, although and obviously Kenny Galladay's been rough to this point, but Kenny Galladay gets the Falcons this week, so that's also something to consider. True. I think after 2 weeks of rough days and him spending a little time screaming at Daniel Jones is probably going to try to give him the ball, so I'm not going to advocate a whole lot for Kenny Galladay in most situations, but the this week against the Falcons. You might want to start your Giants receivers for that one.
Yeah. And speaking of the Atlanta Falcons and everybody, let's move on to the
news in the NFL today.
I mean, really more like this week, but you get the idea. So a whole bunch of quarterbacks are questionable now. Tua is questionable with rib injury, I think it was. Carson Wentz somehow sprained both ankles on the same play, which is just, I don't know how that's possible. Andy Dalton got his knee banged up. He's questionable for next week. And I know I'm missing somebody else. Can you help me here?
Houston.
Tyrod Taylor's out for multiple weeks. Yep, that's what it was. So just absolute mess in terms of quarterbacks going down. So maybe at least for the Texans, Jared, what do you think this does for Brandon Cooks? Because now Davis Mills is the starting quarterback, and I know Cooks is getting just about every single target. Nobody else on that team caught more than 2 passes last game. And in fact, I think it was only one person who caught 2 passes. So is Brandon Cooks just like the easiest flex decision in the history of the world at this point?
Well, I mean, I think he was prior to Tyrod getting hurt, and then now I don't know, what Davis Mills is going to look like, So, Cooks was looking like a steal, I mean, you could get him for $1 or maybe even off the waiver wire in a lot of leagues through most of the preseason. Yeah, now I don't know. I don't know what he's going to look like now with a rookie quarterback in there. And I mean, Davis Mills was a third round pick. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be, he might play better than Zach Wilson. I hope he plays better than how Zach Wilson played last week. But I mean, he could be a fast learner. He could be a Russell Wilson type, but, it's worrisome when you've got any rookie quarterback, but especially, a guy who's not, a touted first round pick or something. So I think if I have, I don't remember off the top of my head who Houston is playing next week, but I think unless it's an easy matchup, and if I have another option besides Brandon Cooks, I would probably roll with that for a week to see what that connection looks like.
Yeah, well, the Texans are going to get their Thursday night game against the Carolina Panthers. That's who they're going to face off against, which as soon as somebody says Christian McCaffrey will be good to go on Thursday, that is I'm not benching him, obviously, but that just makes me just a little bit more nervous because apparently his thighs are just so strong. They broke the roller. Did you see that?
They broke the what?
They broke the roller. The reason he went out last week is because he had cramps. And the roller they were using to loosen up his legs broke.
Wow.
They were rubbing it. They were using it so hard on his thighs. So
wow.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean you've got to be you legitimately just have to have freakish legs if you're an NFL running back. I mean we've seen just guys. In practice, a lot of times in the preseason where, they'll be wearing shorts or something that show off their leg muscles. And, just guys like him or Chubb or Barkley, it's just insane. And then you think about, and then you wonder and you think about all the power that they're generating there. And then you think about giant 300-pound men trying to tackle them and how do guys ACLs and Achilles not just pop and snap on every single play? I don't know. So anyway, it's impressive.
Drew Vano brings up he also has Corey Davis on his bench, which Corey Davis kind of almost pulled a Corey Davis, which for those of you who don't know the terminology, it means putting up 0 points, which he did for 2 games in a row last year. So everybody's week 1 hero got a whopping 2 catches for 8 yards. But, I mean, we kind of saw this coming. Zach Wilson against Bill Belichick. Patriots defense, Bears defense, Bills defense. Those made some happy fantasy owners this week. Any of those teams won you your game, basically.
Yeah. And Corey Davis, I'm not going to be too hard on him. Zach Wilson just wasn't doing anything. It was against the Patriots defense, who Bill Belichick just gobbles up rookie quarterbacks, and next week isn't super easy either with Denver.
Nope.
And then it lets up for Tennessee and Atlanta, and then it's right back to New England again. So I think, overall, I think Corey Davis can be pretty useful this year, but over the next 5 weeks or so, a couple of those are kind of tough matchups, and then one's a bye. So, I would kind of contemplate which situations I wanted to play Corey Davis.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough decision. Jared, anything big you noticed in the NFL news this week?
I think you covered a lot of it in terms of the injuries. Just those quarterback injuries were kind of the big thing.
Yeah. It's gonna be just I'm kind of scared to figure out what happens next week, because I feel like it's one of those like those giant wheels where you spin it and something bad happens. So like week 1, it was half the NFL is terrible. Week 2, a third of the quarterbacks get injured, and who knows what it's going to be week 3. And all the kickers miss game-winning field. I don't know what it's going to be like this week. But we got Noah Drontel in the comment section asking, is Chris Godwin and Tom Brady for Josh Allen and CeeDee Lamb a good trade in PPR? Jared, what do you think about this one?
I think that's pretty fair. I was just watching TJ Hawkinson. It's like pulled in a nice. Did he get his foot in? It's kind of hard to tell. Trying to see if he got his foot in.
I hope he did.
Yeah, he got a touchdown there. So another good start for Hawkinson. I think that helps me win a league that was kind of shaky.
All right. See, this is why Judah didn't show up. He wasn't ready to face the music about the Packers-Lions game so far. That explains it.
There's actually, not to get distracted from the trade question, but there's I saw a story today where there's a bettor out there who put a $25 team parlay bet down, and if the Lions win, he's got all the others right, and if the Lions win, he gets like $750,000.
What?
So, Can you imagine sitting here watching it, and it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. So
no way.
If they win, he gets $750,000. If they don't win, he gets nothing. So wow. Can you imagine sitting here with that sort of stress?
That's nuts. That's crazy.
Anyway, so to that question, I think that's a pretty fair trade. On one hand, you're expecting Josh Allen to bounce back, and CeeDee Lamb looks like he's, the number one in Dallas. There's going to be weeks where maybe Amari gets some more, they're a split, but I feel better about him being, the number one target there, as opposed to in Tampa. Chris Godwin, you got Mike Evans there, you got Rob Gronkowski, you got Antonio Brown, and it looks like week to week, probably one of those guys is not, is going to kind of not put up as much of a good outing. First week it was Mike Evans. This week it was AB. Maybe Godwin is a little bit more, he's going to be a little bit more consistent than two of those, but it's, you can't say for sure. So I think I kind of like the consistency of Lamb over Godwin a little bit, but at the same time, you would think that, okay, Josh Allen is going to bounce back, and maybe Brady fades after this hot start. You can't say that for sure. Lamar, after Lamar, the year that he had a couple years ago, we just kept expecting him to progress, and he's taken a step back.
Yeah.
So there's no guarantee that Josh Allen couldn't take a step back on that. And Tom Brady, I don't know what he has left to do other than, probably wants to set the single season touchdown record. And he could very well do it with that cast that he's got around him.
That's true.
I would probably be inclined to do it. But I think it's not like a slam dunk. I think it's actually a relatively even trade.
Yeah, I do think it's pretty fair. I think a lot of it depends on how I think, like you said, how a lot of it depends on how you think Josh Allen's going to go. Brady doesn't have it easy. Rams, Patriots, and I mean Dolphins, but they just got torched by the Bills, so I don't know what to think about that. And then the Bucs schedule's kind of in and out. I guess part of it is I know you always like looking at end of the season schedules, and the Bucs get the Panthers and the Jets, and their playoff games. So I think that is something to think about. Meanwhile, Josh Allen, he gets the Falcons in the championship game, but the week before he gets New England, and I'm not sure how I like that. So I think I like CD. I think he'll be more consistent than Godwin. I think you're right. Godwin's going to be the most consistent out of the four starting receivers that the Bucs have to throw to. I guess a lot of it relies on whether you think Josh Allen's going to blow up. If you think he's going to go back to normal form, I do it. If you're concerned about it, I think Brady and Godwin are a much safer bet. So that's my opinion on it. Yeah. Drew Vano says, although he's 2-0, he's 2-0 in our league, even though this is his first auction he's ever done.
Nice.
Well done. Good start. Nice. Good start, man.
That is a good start, yeah. Auctions are different. They're a different animal. So to start 2-0 in your first one is good.
Oh, yeah. And especially since our league is just I don't know what is going on. I don't understand. I'm 1-1 scoring 75 points a game. Mr. Judah is 0-2. He's going to be leading the league after this week. And you're 0-2. So this is like the world is turned upside down for me in that league. I don't know what's going on.
It's my team there is worrisome probably because Antonio Gibson is getting a lot of carries and stuff, but he's not scoring touchdowns right now. And I think Damian Harris, his situation's pretty good. He's not bad. Javonte Williams, I think, is going to come on as the season goes along, but I'm afraid I could be out of it before my team really starts to click.
Yeah. And Drew brings up the fact his bench is weak, though, dude. It's a 14-team league.
Just about everybody's bench.
Yes, and with the amount of injuries there have already been, everybody's team is weak. It's gotten to the point where someone spent $100 fab on Eli Mitchell. Anything is possible in this league. I still had Boston Scott and Wayne Gallman because I couldn't find anyone as a suitable replacement. It's a mess. It's gonna be starter heavy for sure for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Let me see. And it's trying to think if there's anything else NFL related. Well, your guy, I think your guy Michael Pittman finally showed up, and Zach Pascal regressed immensely. Do you think this is because Pittman's going to be the number one, or this is how the Colts are going to be, where you roll the dice and hope the receiver gets all the receptions?
Well, I think Pittman, I think from kind of what we talked about Saturday is I expected it to take Pittman another game or so, like last week with the Rams and Jalen Ramsey. I thought it was probably going to be another week before maybe he started to break out a little bit. But 12 targets, 8 receptions, 123 yards against the Rams is pretty good. Now it's a little bit worrisome in that he may have Jacob Eason throwing to him. So
how do you feel about that?
I don't think Jacob Eason's really ready. So so that's got a lot of real world and fantasy implications. So, the trouble is, unless you're in a deeper league, if you're in a 12-team league, 14-team league, there are just so many good wide receiver options that are out there that it's tough to, it seems like you can, for at least your 2 starting wide receiver spots, if not also your flex, it seems like most people are going to have a pretty consistent option there. So it's kind of difficult for me to roll the dice on Pittman in a 10-team league when it may kind of fluctuate week to week. But he did have a good game. That was encouraging. Pascal he kind of did some of his thing, where he only had 38 yards, but he had a touchdown and 5 receptions. And, week 1, he only had 43 yards, 4 catches and two touchdowns. And so that's just kind of what he does. Is he's not that great of a receiver, but he can find ways or to get open in the end zone, or they just kind of scheme for him a little bit more. So I actually started Zach in a 12-team league where there's 3 starting receiver spots. So I made him my third receiver, and and it worked out pretty well. But I don't know how often you can count on. He's now had 3 touchdowns in 2 games. There's regression. There's regression coming there.
True. And even though Judah isn't here, we've got to play it.
I'm sorry, Judah McNeil, but you know what? I'm still the best.
And he proved he's the best. 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, and the second leading receiver on the team.
Yeah.
With 6 catches.
Yeah.
The King's back.
Yeah. It's, the way the fantasy season is shaping up early on, and maybe this changes in a couple of weeks, but it's looking like there's not a lot of things you can really count on. But Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry seem to be guys. I know Derrick Henry had that rough week 1, but he actually ended up, not. He didn't have a great day, but he had 9.2 points. If he had had a touchdown there, then his day looks very different. It was just like he ended up with 58 yards on 17 carries, and then added some receiving yards. But initially, it was like 8 yards on 9 carries, and so Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, I think they're going to be some of the few workhorse backs you can really count on. So
absolutely. And another thing the Titans did is gave Julio Jones the ball again. So as a Julio owner in 1 or 2 leagues, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that performance as a consistent thing, because Julio has never been the most consistent player over the last few years. So, Jared, what do you think about that? Is that a product of the game, or is that going to continue with Julio actually getting more targets, more catches, more yards, and no touchdowns? Because that's just what happens with Julio.
Because, that's just him. It was worrisome. I think what's kind of worrisome is that, A.J. Brown, through two games, he has 49 receiving yards and 43 receiving yards. There's some different things going on. I don't know how much more the Titans used play action, but I know that was a critique of that first game, is that, maybe the reason that the offense didn't do quite so well is that was really what Arthur Smith did for Ryan Tannehill. So, can the Titans offense support, King Derrick Henry plus a great game from Julio plus a great game from A.J. Brown on a week-to-week basis? That's seeming kind of iffy, but we'll have to see.
Yep. Drew Vano brings up thoughts on Henry Ruggs, who I can't believe this, but Derek Carr actually kind of spread the ball out. He didn't target Waller till the ends of the earth, which may have been a product of the game they played against Pittsburgh instead of Baltimore, but Ruggs actually led the team in yards and tied the team lead in receptions with Darren Waller. Do you think this is consistent, or once again a Henry Ruggs game where he caught a touchdown for 50 yards and that boosts his stats?
I'm going to throw that one your way and see what do you think? What do you think on Ruggs?
I like Ruggs a lot. I'm not at the point where I'm trusting him yet, because there were games last year too where Waller would just kind of fly under the radar, and then all Derek Carr could see would be Darren Waller all over again. So I don't know how much I trust this. I don't know if Hunter Renfrow is going to get more catches, which for some reason he has just out of the blue. I can't believe he did. So I like this as an individual Henry Ruggs game, and it gives me hope for the rest of the year because he still did get 7 targets, but one of those was a 61-yard touchdown catch, which makes up the majority of his yards. So I like it. For me, it's enough to pick him up, but it's not enough for me to be like, oh, instant start as soon as I see Henry Ruggs' name.
Yeah, I pretty much agree.
Under response, we were talking about the Titans too. Drew Vano brings up, feels like AJ Brown is seeing the best corners, so Julio should open up more. Maybe that's true. I mean, Titans, none of them played first week of preseason, so you and Judah brought up, it was basically like preseason week 5 for a lot of teams, or week 4 nowadays for a lot of teams too. So maybe it's just a product of game 1.
Yeah, I hope I might get to see that. Titans-Colts game is next Sunday. And let's see, I think that is pretty sure that's in Nashville. So a lot of times
in Nashville.
They'll, down here in the South, the AFC, the AB, let's see, the CBS affiliate will air the AFC games.
Right.
So I think I had to sit through Jacksonville, Houston in week 1. So it'd be nice if they'd show Colts, Titans, because I'd love to, get a look at the Colts in person, and Titans too. But we'll see. That would give me a better idea of exactly what, kind of how teams are playing Brown and Julio plus Derrick Henry. So
here's hoping you don't get Cardinals Jaguars instead. Here's hoping.
I hope not.
Jonathan Buster says watching the Peyton Eli telecast on ESPN is almost as good as Roto Hackers minus Judah. Man, taking shots at a man who isn't here. That's pretty low, Jonathan. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, I think he would probably take similar shots if Judah was here. So
sure. So which you're Peyton in this scenario, I'm assuming, right? You're the more experienced one here. You've got to be Peyton.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if we just go by ages, it's I've got to be Peyton and you're Eli. Yeah.
Works for me. All right. Len boy, good to see you, man. Says, yo, I made it. Good to have you back, man. It's been a hot minute since we've seen you. Good to be back in the chat with you. And Jared, before we get to our pickups for the week, one other thing that I don't know what kind of anomaly it was, but Jameis has eaten some L's this week in New Orleans. They go from the top of the world, knocking off Green Bay, to leading the team in rushing against the Panthers. Jared, what on earth? Is this a fluke game? Is Sean Payton going to yell at everybody? Is Taysom going to force his way? Okay, probably not. But what on earth? I had no idea what to think of that game. Literally a dude named Lil Jordan Humphrey led the team in receptions.
Yeah, I'm still saddened by Marquez Callaway turning out to just be like nothing but a preseason superstar who has done nothing. I think that's one of the more surprising, because normally I don't really pay that much attention to training camp stuff or or really bank stuff on that. But I thought like, oh yeah, this guy he's got an opportunity there with Michael Thomas out. And man, that was just complete fool's gold. So, I think unfortunately, probably week 2 is more indicative of Jameis than week 1, because you look at what he did in week 1 and the numbers look great from a fantasy standpoint because he had 5 touchdowns. As far as like the actual yardage they threw for and stuff like that, it was not so good. They mostly
150 or something. Yeah,
it was right around 150, and they mostly just benefited from whatever the Packers were trying to do, So, it was kind of nice to see, after 1 week to kind of think like, oh, there might be, some hope for a Jameis resurgence there, like maybe a year in New Orleans and having Sean Payton as his coach and kind of getting him into more of a fast passing, Drew Brees style, offense or something like that might turn his career around. I mean, we'll see what happens next week, but after that dud in Carolina and the fact that his, numbers in week 1 really weren't as good as they looked. It's looking kind of shaky.
Yeah. And Limboy says, yes, me to Callaway. And literally everybody on the Saints team, I'm sure Kamara killed so many people this week. What, like 5 yards rushing? That's something I expect like Wayne Gallman to put up as Mike Davis's Cordero Patterson's backup. But man, that's got to be a fluke game for him, I'm thinking. But then I remember the Saints get New England in Foxborough next week. And like, you got to start Kamara because he's Kamara, but I'm tempering my expectations for that game.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary for him. I mean, like I was saying, there's just so many guys that if you're not Christian McCaffrey or Derrick Henry, how much can you trust Alvin Kamara after, you're right, eight rushes for 5 yards. He had, four catches and added another 25, but that's still brutal, So, and it's not like we think of the Panthers as having this intimidating run defense,
real. Yeah.
So lots to worry about with most running backs for one reason or another.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our pickups for the week, which is a segment that we like to call
Sleeper Waiver Wire.
I love the vocal effect on that. But Jared, are there any good pickups you have for us this week with running backs and quarterbacks going down left and right and wide receivers popping up everywhere? Who do you got for us, Jared? Let's start with maybe some running backs or wide receivers.
Yeah, so this is another thing where I feel like we're already like at week 2 and the waiver wire feels slimmer, sparser than normal. I was about to check and see like what James White's usage or ownership looks like.
He led the team in receiving, right, this week?
Yeah, he he's just kind of doing the James White thing. He's only 42% owned. Boy. Only 42% owned, and Stevenson was I think a healthy scratch. So what's happening with James White is he's not really doing that much on the ground, only getting 4 or 5 carries. He did have a touchdown this week, but he's getting 6 or 7 targets and pretty much catching all of them for 45 to 50 yards. So as an RB2 in a situation where you've got guys like CEH doing nothing, you've got Alvin Kamara putting up 5 yards on 8 carries. James White's 9.1 points in week 1 and 15.5 in week 2 aren't like super enticing, but if you just look at the rest of the running back landscape, as soon as you do that, then it suddenly becomes more enticing after that.
That's the truth. Any other running backs or wide receivers you got?
Well, how about you? Do you have a running back pick?
Man, like you said, running backs are kind of a mess. I definitely don't trust Zach Moss, even though he had 2 touchdowns, but 12-team leagues, if he's getting goal line carries and this ends up being one of those things where Singletary gets him there and Moss finishes it, that might be a deeper league grab because, like you said, people are just going down, dropping like flies. So I don't mind that one nearly as much because it seems like he might be their goal line carry. He might be their goal line guy. The Ravens, oh my goodness, I don't know what to think about them at all anymore. Devin Duvernay is getting fumble recoveries for touchdowns. If Cordero Patterson's still out there, I think he's clearly the number 2 behind Mike Davis somehow, and he's vulturing touchdowns. So I think deeper leagues, he's definitely a grab to get as well. Anybody else I can think of? it gets really tough after those for me, to be honest.
So somebody else I'll throw back out there, and I wouldn't love rolling with him too much right now, but maybe just for later in the season.
Yeah.
So Michael Carter went from four carries in week 1 to 11 in week 2.
True.
And he had 59 yards. So, and he caught a couple of balls in the passing game. So, again, he only had 9.1 points or something.
We'll take that.
Right. And again, he's not somebody that you want to really rely on right now, but if you've got the luxury of maybe stashing him for later in the season, the way the running back landscape looks right now, I think that might be a solid decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe one other one with Darrell Henderson banged up this week. Sony Michel's available in 40% of leagues, and he got 10 carries. And granted, none of those were until Darrell Henderson went out. But handcuffs are everything. So if he's out there, I think that's another guy to get. Len Boy bringing up, what about Philly's Watkins guy? Quez Watkins, I think, is the one he's talking about. Jared, what do you think of Quez? Caught, I think, like 2 passes for 100 yards.
Yeah, I'm not. I kind of believe in following the targets. So through 2 weeks, Quez has 3 targets and 2 targets in each respective week. So he caught both those for 117 yards. If a guy's not getting targets, usually not going, because those bomb plays, you never know.
Yeah, Henry Ruggs plays.
Yes, right. You never know how they're going to shake out. So I wouldn't be that high on Quez. A guy who's 2/3 owned, but I've been talking him up since right before the season started, is Marquis Brown. He's out there in 34% of leagues. Week 1, 6 targets, caught all 6 for 69 and a touchdown. Week 2, he had 10 targets for 6 catches, 113 yards and a touchdown. I think the Ravens are they're going to throw some more. As they are just down to their fourth, 5th, and 6th running backs. Although I like the job Tyson Williams is doing, and I wish he would get more consistent carries. It's like the Ravens running back core now is sort of like the group project in school where the one kid does all the work, Tyson Williams, and then he gets it like to the finish line, and then like the charismatic kid who's not nervous in front of the class gets to present it. That's basically Latavius Murray.
Ouch.
Stealing.
Ouch. Hey, that's my guy you're talking about.
Stealing touchdowns that Tyson Williams has worked hard to get them down there to earn. So, I think Marquise Brown is going to continue to be a pretty good option for a while. He was coming on towards the end of last year. I think we were hoping last year was going to be a breakout year, and then we just kind of forgot about him. But I think he can be a pretty good option for you. I know there's some other guys, Tim Patrick for the Broncos. Although I still have a hard time trusting him. He seems to show up for a little while, and he's still not getting that many targets. He's got 11.9 and 11.2 points. He's had 4 targets each week. He hasn't hit 40 yards, but he's had a touchdown each time. So I see him. I see Tim Patrick as a Zach Pascal, where he's not going to get that many targets. He's maybe going to give you 40 yards and a touchdown if you want to roll the dice on it, but unless you're in a deeper league, there's just so many guys out there that are getting so many more consistent looks.
Right. Yeah. Trying to think of another one that I can bring up. One guy that Limboy says, all right, thanks. Yeah, no problem, dude. Thanks for always checking in. Bruising in the comment section. Good to see you, man. Oh, is that a Jordan jersey? I think it's a Jordan jersey. Let's go. He says, should I trade Darrell, Waller, and Debo for Zeke, Andrews, DJ Moore, and Sterling Shepard. And I know, Jared, you're a big Andrews fan. So what do you think? Zeke's getting carries vultured by Pollard, but Moore and Shepard have been consistent for 2 straight weeks. What do you think, Jared?
I have been a big Andrews fan, but he's starting off kind of slow this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not. It's
he's
better.
Been good.
It's better than Kittle numbers. I mean,
true.
But still, he's not. He's not doing a whole lot, and he's not really being used as a red zone. That's what he needs to be is a good red zone weapon.
Right.
I think he's got a lot of talent, but just the way their offense works, and it's just not it's not working out great for him. I think it kind of depends on the depth of your team. If you need an extra wide receiver, I suppose I would probably do that deal. I mean, is this Darrell Henderson we're talking about? I guess
I'm pretty sure it's Darrell Henderson. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think even with Zeke's issues, he's still at worst going to get a split with Pollard. I think Henderson will probably end up in something like that, either by injuries or something. So I think you're upgrading there, going from Henderson to Zeke, as well as Debo's playing. I think that's going to even out a little bit more. Kittle's going to get more looks. I assume Ayuk's going to probably make an appearance at some point in the season. So DJ Moore and Sterling Shepard are both doing well. The one where you're downgrading is from Waller to Andrews, and that's tough. If you've got a really good tight end, it's tough to give up a good tight end. So again, there's like the other trade that we talked about earlier tonight. I think that's pretty fair. But I think I would probably do it by a hair. But it may also kind of depend on what do the rest of your receivers look like. Is if DJ Moore is just going to step in for Debo and Sterling Shepard's going to sit on your bench, then is that really worth it? But if you've got Debo and I don't know, Zach Pascal,
maybe Judy got injured.
Yeah, Judy or so, yes, at another receiver spot or a flex spot, and you need someone else to step in, then that deal probably makes sense. If one of them's just going to sit on your bench, or I don't know then if it does as much.
Yeah, I really don't have much to add to that. I'm not the biggest proponent of Zeke in the world, that. But I like DJ Moore. I love the target share he's getting in Carolina above everyone else, even sometimes above McCaffrey too. So, I like that one a lot.
It's good to see. It's good to see them use DJ Moore.
Sorry,
no, I was just going to say it's good to see them use DJ Moore, who was a guy that I invested a lot in last year, and he was just getting out targeted by Robbie Anderson. And now, oddly enough, just Robbie Anderson sort of disappeared in that offense, even though they brought in the guy who used to throw to him in New York. So, I'm glad to see DJ Moore because he always seemed like he had tons of talent, and it just wasn't either the connection with Teddy Bridgewater or the scheme or whatever just wasn't working out right for him. So,
yep. Well, before we get ready to go, I'll throw out a couple of other names for pickups. One of them is Kenneth Gainwell. If he's still available, grab him up. He's the heir apparent to what's his name, Miles Sanders, and he's still owned in over 60% of leagues. And I had said this last week as a joke, or not a joke, but like it's like a half serious name mention. And then I looked at what's going on in the Packers game, and Quinton Cephus has touchdowns in back-to-back games. And I'm not saying you should pick him up like immediately, but in deeper leagues, I don't mind that. He's not getting the line. I think he could be a big target of Goff's. And I said that as like kind of a joke. I was like, oh yeah, he caught a 40-yard pass. That's the only reason I know him, but he's leading the Lions in targets tonight.
So I picked him up in one league. It's a 12-team league. It's
nice.
the one that It's the one that I'm in with Judah, and I should have picked him up in our league too. I should have probably dropped Brian Edwards for him, but there's more. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. For whatever reason, I had a couple other guys that were just more easily droppable, so I actually picked him up, and so I felt pretty. And so when I picked him up at the time, he was available in every single league, in every single one of my 21 leagues. He was 1%. He was 1% owned. So I'm like, all right. Yep. So now to see him doing well is kind of like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm proud that I got in on the ground floor of that. But if you didn't, I can't blame you for not picking him up last week because he had 12 yards. But again, you got to kind of look at targets, and he had 6 targets, which for a Lions wide receiver, 6 targets was great last week. Plus, the other thing is of his 3 catches. Well, actually, I don't know if one of those counted as a catch. This may have been an extra one, but one was a touchdown and one was a 2-point conversion. So that showed me that Goff was looking for him multiple times in the end zone. So yeah, I think if you're in a deeper league, Quinton Cephus is looking like a pretty good option for just the fact that Goff will have to throw to wide receivers once in a while.
Yep. 2 others I got real quick. Zach Pascal, of course, is still 16% owned, like you said, and shockingly, this dude for the Vikings, KJ Osborne, your mantra, Jared, is follow the targets, 9 and 6. And Justin Jefferson has not put up the numbers he put up last year so far. So I don't know. Do you think that's a product of Kirk Cousins just spreading the ball out? Do you think that's something that might be sustainable for Minnesota? I don't know. What do you think?
I think I'm pretty aggravated that Justin Jefferson's not getting more targets because I got him late in a couple of leagues where he was going for maybe around $25 or so in auction, and I'm like, oh, that's not a bad deal. And again, he's not been terrible. He's had 9 targets and 10 targets, and he's caught about half those. 71 yards in the first game, 65 and a touchdown in the second game. So he's been double digits. So I can't complain too much. But it's disappointing when you look in comparison to especially what Thielen did in week 1 and kind of what you're talking about with Osborne. The thing about Osborne is, he's a young wide receiver. He's only in his second year. He is getting a fair amount of targets, like you said, 9 and 6, and then caught 7 and 5. It's hard to sort of imagine a Kirk Cousins offense supporting 3 receivers in the same way that Tom Brady can support 3 receivers. I don't know if that's going to continue. But I guess they don't have a ton in terms of. I'll have to go back and look and see how they've been using their tight end. But they lost. Who was the young tight end that they lost at the start of the season?
I can't remember his name. Irv Smith Jr.
Irv Smith. Yeah, we should remember that because of our in our league the drunk guy at the bar drafting him for who was he drafting him for? Was he drafting him for Ryan or for Liam? Okay, yeah.
It was Liam.
So we should have remembered that name better. Just looking at it, they don't have a ton. So I guess Tyler Conklin is their tight end now. Sorry, I'm all of a sudden getting bombarded. Do you hear my fine. Facebook note?
I can hear it. It's fine.
So Tyler Conklin is in there now. He's getting a couple of targets. He got in this game, I think he had 2 for 15 yards, and so they don't really have, whereas in the past they've had a Kyle Rudolph, and then last year they had Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith. Now they don't really have as much of a tight end presence there. So maybe it can be, maybe it can continue. One other one that I will throw out there, speaking of offenses that can support, 3 receivers maybe or whatever, is the Vikings opponent from last week, the Cardinals, who Kyler Murray is having a little, fast connection with Rondale Moore, who was the team's, let's see, I'll have to see what round he was drafted in last year. Second round. Okay. So yeah, 17th pick of the second round out of Purdue. The thing that scares me about Rondale Moore is he's tiny. He's 5'7", 181 pounds. But right now, so far, he had 8.8 points in the first game, 4 catches on 5 targets, 68 yards. And then last game, 7 of 8 for 114 and a touchdown. So, you've got Christian Kirk there. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know if that can really keep up. His size worries me because, obviously he's not going to be a huge red zone target or something like that. But so far it's looking like he's more of the number 2 option as opposed to Kirk. So Rondale Moore is only, I think, 34% owned. 34% owned. He's available. Basically that percentage works out exactly where he's available in exactly, 66% of my leagues. So I would probably prefer Rondale to Osborne just because I think he's the second, option in that league versus Osborne being the third. The second option on that team versus Osborne being the third on his, and he's tied to a better passer. But I like both those guys. And if you're in a 12-team league or a 14-team league or something like that, if you get either one of those, I wouldn't complain about that. So,
yep. And Limboy brings up the fact, yep. And AJ Green.
Yeah, although let's see, what has AJ Green done to this point?
He caught a touchdown last week.
He did catch a touchdown. He's getting about a half a dozen targets. So, So Arizona is, is just that Cliff Kingsbury, air raid attack. So I don't know. But yeah, I think Moore and Osborne are both, pretty good options there. But again, you probably have to be in a deeper league really in order to put them out there each week, because I've got leagues where I'm like, it pains me that I can't put one of my wide receivers in at running back, because I'll have like, I had leagues where I had like Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, T Higgins, Mike Williams. And I'm like, I want to start all 4 of those. Can I, Mike Williams is tall. He's like tall, like a tight end. Can I put him at tight end, or I don't know. Can one of them play running back? Because, it's just, for wide receiver, I just have in most leagues an embarrassment of riches. And then at running back, I'm like, who am I even going to, I benched, Saquon last week, in most of my leagues. And then I'm like, okay, who am I going to put in? Like, well, Broncos have the Jaguars. Melvin Gordon had a good week 1. And then Melvin Gordon and Saquon both had exactly 7.9 points. So I just swapped out one guy scoring 7.9 points for another guy scoring 7.9 points. So that was a little bit frustrating. So, it's if you're in a league where you've got a lot of wide receiver spots, a lot of these guys can, I think really help you. If not, then gosh, you probably just have to stash them on your bench and keep them there in case there's an injury later or something.
Yeah. We got two questions here. Yeah. Sorry. You going to say something?
No, I just saw it at the same time you did. Go ahead.
Oh, yep. We got 2 questions here. Bruisin back again asks, should I start Zach Pascal or our guy we just talked about, Rondale Moore at flex, and Jarrett, especially if Carson Wentz is going to have 2 bum ankles this week. I'm leaning Rondale Moore. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna lean Rondale 2 at Jacksonville.
Forgot about that.
That's a tasty matchup. Zach, I like him for the time being while some of these guys are out, but I think his touchdown luck is going to run out eventually, and especially if it's Jacob Eason in there this week, that's likely to happen sooner rather than later. So I would go with Rondale.
Yep. Kenny's got our other question as we hit the 1 hour mark. Says start 2. Mike Williams, Najee Harris, and Mixon for week 3. Now, Jared, the easy one for me is Mike Williams, but between Najee and Mixon, what do you think? Is this just completely matchup dependent for them?
So they're playing each other. Actually, I just had to look that up. I had to look that up because I couldn't remember off the top of my head. It's the thing is, I don't ever really love running backs against that Pittsburgh defense. I'm inclined to shy away, especially if it's in Pittsburgh. I'm inclined to shy away from Mixon. I know Najee has not exactly been tearing it up on the ground behind that offensive line, but he did get more action in the passing game last week. Yep. He had a touchdown and he had a very, very respectable, especially in light of what else we've got in this year at the running back position. 16.6 points. I would have to lean
there we go.
Mike Williams and Najee Harris. Yeah.
Yep. Same here. Mixon's a good player, but not against that Steelers defense. Not a chance, especially after what happened last week where the Bengals couldn't get anything running. It literally came down to Burrow to fling the ball around the field, and the Steelers defense shut down Singletary because Moss is a healthy scratch. Singletary, and then just didn't let Peyton Barber run the football until the fourth quarter. So, yeah, Williams and Najee for me. Thomas H. says, my son wants to know if he should start Chase Edmonds, Mike Williams, or Robert Woods at flex, half-point PPR. Jared, Edmonds is the safest, I think, out of all of these. But what are you thinking?
I think Edmonds and Woods are both kind of along the same lines. I mean, Robert Woods, we've been disappointed with him, but I mean, basically he's averaged 10 points in 2 games. He's 10.9 and 9.5. It's weird. It's weird to me that he's not getting thrown to more. That's another one of those that, like a lot of things within fantasy, I'm like, okay, this is what I think is going to happen. But if it deviates, or even if it's like a polar opposite 180-degree turn, it wouldn't shock me. But this is another one where I'm like, man, I'm surprised Robert Woods is not getting more looks from Matt Stafford. I like all 3 of those options, actually. I think Kansas City actually, last year at least, it's pretty early to say this year, Kansas City has been pretty good against the deep ball at times. Although, I can think of, games a couple years ago where Mike Williams just tore them up. I think there was one game where he was just constantly, last year, final game against Kansas City, had 7 targets, 108 yards, and a touchdown. First game, he didn't really do too much against them. But, I feel like Williams could be more of a boom bust kind of guy. If you're aiming for, upside, maybe you go Williams. Although I feel like just a breakout game is coming for Woods too, right?
I mean, against Tampa, though, that's my one concern. But they could lock up on Cooper Kupp the whole game, to be fair.
See, the fact that it is Tampa actually kind of makes me, I think, more inclined, that Woods could get more involved, because they're not going to be able to run. They're not going to be able to run against Tampa. And last year, and I think part of me is thinking back to last year too. It was a different quarterback, different style of play, but Robert Woods tore them up, had 15 targets, 12 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown. True. So part of me really wants to say, you know, to go against what we've seen so far and say Robert Woods, because I just feel like that game is coming from him and they're probably going to need it against Tampa. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say Woods, but I think you're right. Edmonds is probably the safest play. And Williams probably has the most boom or bust potential. This is just like, it feels like choosing a character in a role-playing game or something, right. You know, where like the strengths and weaknesses are all like completely different. And I think I just kind of like maybe threw out a word salad on that question, but ultimately I'll say Robert Woods.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm probably leaning Edmonds. You know, I'm like the safer play kind of guy. So I'll probably say Chase Edmonds for my selection there. Bruisin asks Debo or Thielen. And look, I was the biggest Thielen proponent of drafting him this year. But Debo's getting such a large target share. It's hard for me to go against him. I think I say Debo here.
Yeah, I was going to look and see what the matchups are.
I think the 49ers get the Packers. I'm not sure about Minnesota.
That's right. Minnesota gets Seattle. So, well, I mean, I like both. I like both those, but yeah, the 49ers run game situation is pretty shaky. Debo's getting a ton of targets. Yeah, I would go with. I think I would still go with Debo for right now.
Yeah. Yep. Kenny's got a question for us. He says, should he trade Mike Williams and Myles Gaskin for Allen Robinson? His running backs are Mixon, Harris, and Kamara. Ooh, but he's lacking in wide receiver. He's got A.J. Brown and Amari, which is leading people to say, is he in a 5-man league? But apparently people just didn't. He dropped to the 4th round. Mixon dropped to the 4th round in Kenny's league. That's crazy. So, Jared, what do you think? Mike Williams and Myles Gaskin for Allen Robinson here? Because he's got a pretty good running back trio.
So, you know, that would be a trade made assuming that Allen Robinson's going to get back to himself and Mike Williams is going to falter. Because right now, Allen Robinson is not doing much of anything. In 2 games, he has 59 yards and a touchdown. Mike Williams is just tearing it up. You know, the thing about Mike Williams that you worry about is his health. But I mean, he has 22 targets, 15 catches, you know, averaging like 85, 86 yards a game, 82 in one game, 91 another, a touchdown in each one of those games. You know, you forget that he's like a 7th overall pick, I think, out of Clemson. He's just had trouble staying healthy, but with Allen Robinson's quarterback situation, I don't know that I could trade Mike Williams. This may sound crazy. I would be probably scared to trade Mike Williams straight up for Allen Robinson right now. And then especially add in a running back where I know Gaskin is not really doing much of anything right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe he comes on later. Maybe they decide, you know, to stop fooling around with a committee or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you've got a starting running back. I would not do that trade.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why I wouldn't do it is because I've said this so many times, the Bears fan, our schedule is stupid. It is mean. It's ridiculous. And having to think about, well, either Dalton or Fields is going to have to throw against the Packers, Buccaneers, 49ers, Steelers, and Ravens in consecutive games is not something that I want to mess with in the middle of the season. And I think the biggest thing is that the Bears are transitioning to a run-first offense. What's his name? David Montgomery is getting the majority of the carries. Or is getting all the carries that basically he wants in Chicago. They're spreading the ball out more. Mooney led the team in receptions. I think A-Rob's going to end up being boom or bust, and I didn't draft him at all this year because I thought the Bears were going to be kind of a mess, and I hated our schedule. And so I don't think I'd do it either. Robinson could come back to normal later in the year, but There's so many issues with the Bears organization right now. The ball's getting spread out more. It's not just Trubisky giving one read and then throwing it to him. So I think I'm with you on this. As much as I hate to say this for A-Rob, but I think I'm with you. Just keep Williams.
Yeah, I did the same. In 21 leagues, I drafted one share of Allen Robinson because I was afraid, as much as I love him as a player, I was afraid of his quarterback situation and versus what he was going for, which was about the same price as, like a Keenan Allen or somebody like that, who's tied to a much better quarterback. So, I'm worried about A-Rob for the season.
Yeah, Kenny, thanks for the advice. Thanks for dropping by, Kenny. Good to see you with us. Good to have you on the show. Bruisen's got another question for us. Thanks, man. As DJ Moore or Debo, two guys getting the majority of their targets with their team. I'm leaning Debo Samuel for the reason that I think that the Niners are going to throw a lot against Green Bay because they have, two running backs on their entire 53-man roster. And I like DJ Moore, but it's going to be a Thursday night game. Thursday night games aren't pretty. I think I'm leaning Debo Samuel here, Jared. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that one's a little that one might even be a little bit tougher for me than the Thielen one because DJ Moore is getting, the same kind of target share as Debo.
Can you start both of them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to who else maybe he's got a, if he's got like a DeAndre or Tyreek, then sure. But otherwise I'd try to work both of those guys in, one as a flex or something. And back the same thing for the question before with Thielen, because I mean, a lot of times in years past, I would be like putting a running back at my flex spot. Now I don't even want to put a running back at my running back spot.
Right.
So is there not anywhere you can work in both of those guys? If not, I understand, because I mean, like I said, I have some leagues where I've got I've got like 4, maybe 5 good options at wide receiver. And it's like, I got to leave 1 or 2 of these on the bench. So, but if there was a way to try to work them in, I would probably try to get both of them in there.
Yeah. So do you have a preference over one or the other if he needs just one?
Yeah, slight Debo. Debo, yeah. Because I mean, ultimately the Panthers are still Christian McCaffrey led team, and maybe McCaffrey could bust out for 400 rushing yards or something, and they don't even need DJ Moore or something. But they're both great options. Slightly into Debo just because the 49ers are so banged up at running back, and Ayuk's doing nothing. Kittle hasn't done much of anything. So,
this could be a big Kittle and Debo week for both of them. This could be big games for the two of them, especially. We're over an hour. We'll probably wrap it up in a second. But Jared, I got one thing to say, and we haven't used this little video clip in a while, but
hot takes. That's way too hot.
This man is only 8% owned, and I'm going to stand on this hill until he gets injured. Teddy Bridgewater is the streamer quarterback for the whole season. He's got bad matchups, I'm not going to lie. He gets the Chiefs because he's in the same division, but his schedule isn't that bad. I like the way he's looking. The Broncos offense is leagues better than it looked under Drew Lock. Bridgewater, and with as many quarterbacks, are going down with injuries so far, until further notice, he's the one to have.
I will almost agree. I will say he's the 1B to have right behind 1A, Daniel Jones. You can go back to the split screen. Okay, I don't know what's going on. I will say Daniel Jones is the number 1, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, schedule might end up making the difference, but part of what I'm looking at is just like up next for Daniel Jones is the Falcons, and then 2 weeks after that it's the Cowboys. So those are some tasty matchups. I really like Teddy Bridgewater too. You've been big on the Broncos for the whole offseason. And you're right. Teddy's in a good situation with schedule. He's in a good situation with the talent around him. With Cortland Sutton blew up. We didn't really get to mention that.
True.
Cortland Sutton was a monster. For 12 targets, 9 catches, 159 yards. He came back with a vengeance. So even without Jerry Jeudy, you've got Sutton, you've got Noah Fant, you've got 2 starting caliber running backs in Gordon and Javonte Williams. You've got Tim Patrick, you've got KJ Hamler. The Broncos have a good offense around him, and I'm just glad for Teddy to see. He's had a rough go from the injury with the Vikings that. I think if I remember right, looked like they thought they might even have to amputate his leg or something like that. And then it's a tough road back from that. And he was with the Jets and got shipped out there immediately, and then didn't do anything with the Saints. And then Carolina, it was rough last year. So I'm glad to see Teddy in a good system and having an opportunity to succeed. So I think he is a great streaming option. But if there's one guy that I would put over him, it's and oddly enough, partially because of his rushing ability, is Daniel Jones. Looking like he's going for the league rushing title or something. It's gonna be him and Derrick Henry 1-2. So I will say Daniel Jones, but I really like Teddy Bridgewater too.
Yeah, and I think one other guy too to throw out there might be an every week starter for me is Derek Carr. Herbert's been underperforming, and Carr just went through maybe the hardest part of his schedule with Ravens and Steelers back to back, and he put up 20+ in both.
Yeah. Derek Carr. That's actually another great one that I can't quite figure out if that's real or not. Like Teddy and Daniel Jones, I feel a little bit more confident in because of the talent around, the weapons that Teddy has, and the fact that Daniel Jones is just going to run, like nothing to do with his passing ability at all. It's just he's going to run for yards. He's going to have rushing scores. He feels like he's going to be like a poor man's Josh Allen from last year or something like that.
True. Good way of putting it.
Derek Carr, I have a hard time trusting Derek Carr. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe in is this year 3 under Gruden, I think.
I think so. I think you're right.
I think so. So maybe he's really kind of reformed Derek Carr. Maybe some of these other options, Ruggs, Edwards, Renfro, some of those will come on. It's just I just don't know how Derek Carr is really doing what he's doing right now, and I feel like he may just turn back into a pumpkin at any time. But if he has a great season, then man, credit to John Gruden for really turning him around because
he hasn't looked as good since the Raiders since he messed up his leg, since the Raiders went 14-2 or whatever. It's been 5 or 6 years. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't even remember. I just always think of him as just being, down. Yeah. I guess if you go back, you look all the way back. Last year he had a solid statistical year, not great. 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Which was an improvement over, each of the last 3 or 4 seasons. And if you go all the way back to his second year, second and third year, he was looking like he was really coming along. But he's never been, he's never been a huge yardage guy. He's always been 3,900, 4,000. Last year, he barely peaked over 4,100 yards. Now 2 games in, he's averaging 400 yards a game. So he's the one that I have the most trouble trusting to do it all season. But who knows? Maybe he does.
Yeah. We'll see. Dude, he's like a Toyota, maybe slightly used car, but he still runs.
yeah, right. Oh, we got another all the Debo questions. The Debo questions.
Debo Day from Bruisin today. And speaking of Daniel Jones, this might be where I stop the Debo train because Shepard's got Atlanta. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, same. I'm afraid. I'm a little bit afraid. The only thing that scares me there is that they're going to try to force the ball to Kenny Golladay to make up.
True.
I might still go Debo because I also kind of like how I have trouble trusting Derek Carr. I have a little bit of trouble trusting Sterling Shepard for the whole season.
Yes, I understand completely.
I'm going to make it 3 for 3 and just stick with Debo. But again, another great option with Sterling Shepard there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a great wealth of wide receivers there, Bruisin. That's a great core. Jared, you got anything else? I think we're about wrapping up. You got anything else for us?
No, I caught my second win there for a second, but it's getting late. Probably need to wrap it up. Good luck on the waiver wire tomorrow night.
Yes.
We're a day early, which still feels weird. Maybe we can get back to Tuesdays here at some point. I don't know. This feels weird to be doing it on Monday night and like looking over it.
It does.
Monday night games, but that's just sort of a product of real life and real life schedules. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Roto Hackers, where Judah's not here. My internet is still as mediocre as ever, and Jared's the only consistent part of this whole show, clearly. But
which is not true at all this year. I'm just like dragging myself across every finish line, literal or figurative. But thank you for saying that though. That's
of course. Oh yeah, we can always count on you to be here. Our what's it called, voice of reason, as we like to say around here.
Hey, I can't provide that usually.
There we go. Drew, Noah, Jonathan, Lenboy, Bruisin, and Kenny. Thank you guys all for showing up for this episode. We're going to be back Saturday afternoon, most likely. We're doing Mondays and Saturdays right now. Saturday, we'll talk about some more stardom sit-em stuff, the Thursday night game. Be sure to leave a like. Be sure to subscribe, as normal YouTube people say. And we will see you guys next time. We'll see you on Saturday. And hopefully Jude will be back with us. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.